Connecticut. So first, I would like to thank my dear friend, Ms. Marcus, and your Director of Equity and Community. Is she here? Ms. Harper? Thank you so much for inviting me here to speak with you. And here's our premise for this morning. I am a Cuban in Connecticut who's here to speak with you on Indigenous Peoples Day about Hispanic Heritage Month to an audience of 700 people in under 14 minutes. Ready? Okay. So, given that our time on Earth, and particularly at this specific assembly, is limited, I am going to focus on the power of names and the power of naming. Names are powerful. Names have the power to reveal or conceal who we are. So let's start with Connecticut. Say it with me. Connecticut. Say it with me. Connecticut. Connecticut. What a beautiful word. It takes its name from an Algonquin word that means land on the long tidal river. And we have pronounced that word in the land that belongs to the Nipmucs, the Sequin, the Matabesic or Wappinger, and the Pequot Mohegan. And I want to own that I might have mispronounced some of those names, and I might have omitted others. And that is part of a larger issue, which is the systemic erasure of Indigenous peoples from our curricula, our media, and our collective narrative. Indigenous peoples is a shortcut to identify a large and diverse set of people who didn't call themselves Indigenous peoples. That is an umbrella under which they have been placed by external sources with the power of naming. Indigenous peoples is a product of colonialism. Now let's zoom into New Haven. Say it with me.
New Haven. New Haven.
Perfect. But a new haven for whom? Certainly not for the indigenous peoples who were forced to flee their land and go on a long trail of tears to find their new haven. I said that I'm Cuban. Say it with me.
Cuban.
Such a wonderful audience. Cuban. Cuba, a beautiful Taino word that means great place. In my specific case, the great place from which 23 years ago I fled the Castro dictatorship, a totalitarian regime that has lasted more than 6 decades, and today, October 10th, 2022, is terrorizing the Cuban people who are reclaiming the right to have rights. I am talking about people your age and younger who are barricading the streets and shouting freedom because they believe, as Dr. Martin Luther King did in 1965, that a riot is the language of the unheard. And also because, as the late Congressman John Lewis said in 1963, we do not want our freedom gradually, but we want to be free now. As you can see, Cubans have been speaking for themselves on the island and abroad in exile. They're voting with their feet by crossing the treacherous path from Central America to the United States, by braving on makeshift rafts the 90 miles of sharks and uncertainty that separate Cuba from the United States, or by putting their bodies in front of the police force of a political system that has lost all touch with reality and whatever little credit it still has in the international arena. Cubans know what they want. What we want and we want it now. Homeland and life. Say it with me. Patria y vida. Beautiful concept. If we had time, I ask you for a moment of silence in their honor, but we have to keep moving. So let's go back to the power of names and the power of naming. Let's take a look at Latina, Latino, Latine, Latinx, Hispanic, and all the possible permutations of those identifiers. Well, that's not what I call myself. As you may remember, I am, and my Puerto Rican friends are, and my Mexican friends are, and my Colombian friends are, and so on and so forth. Yet, we have all been placed under a massive umbrella, and under that big umbrella, we have made common cause. The powerful thing about shared umbrellas is that they offer shelter against the tempest. The problem with shared umbrellas is that once you're under them, you have very little room to move about freely. You're confined to a crowded space in which you might become indistinguishable from the people standing next to you. You might gain a collective identity at the risk of losing your national or individual identity. There are 22 Spanish-speaking countries in the world, if we were to include the United States, which, with over 41 million Spanish speakers, is the second largest country in the world in which the language of Gabriela Ibarra, Maria Jose Navia, and Daenerys Machado Bento is spoken. Much like there are cultural differences between the people of New Haven and the people of New Orleans, the people from, say, Lima, Peru, and Cuba's capital, Havana, another beautiful Latino word, share a common language, which is also a product of colonialism. But we differ greatly in our history, traditions, idiosyncrasies, cosmogony. Let's think of another continent. But first, let's think of the Ukrainians. Slava Ukraini is how they say it. We talk about the French, the Italians, the Germans, the Spaniards, the Greeks, the Irish. We even make distinctions for the members of the United Kingdom. We do not throw the Europeans under one big, massive umbrella. So, I came here today to extend an invitation to you to do the same for Africa, the Americas, and Asia. Because, repeat with me, Africa is not a country.
Africa is not a country.
Asia is not a country.
Asia is not a country.
America is not a country.
America is not a country.
Let's normalize calling this nation by its official, proper name, the United States of America. Our nation. And I use the possessive adjective pronoun, because in the immortal words of the wonderful Langston Hughes, I, too, am American. So, America is a continent named after Italian merchant and navigator Americo Vespucci, who is, yes, the person under whose name we have taken to continents, north and south. And America includes up north, Canada, and down south, every country from Mexico all the way down to Argentina. In conclusion, I want you to know that in the next few days, I am going to be very busy. I have other 2 speaking engagements. I am going to be a Cuban in DC. I am going to be a Cuban in a podcast. And I want you all to know that I am also very eloquent and I have a lot to say from October 16th to September 14th every single year. So here's an invitation to, if you feel like it, invite me back at any other time. I'm available in May. So on that note, I want to wish to all of you a happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Thank you so much.
Maybe have time for a question, maybe not, but Alexis will be in the Weissman room, A block and C block, so teachers, if you got Ms. Harper's email and you're supposed to be there, please come visit. We have a free block, please come visit. We'll also be hosting the Latinx Affinity Lunch today, and even if you're just curious and have a question you didn't get to ask today during this assembly, please feel free to stop by at that time. We're so excited to have him here to answer multiple different kinds of questions today, but most importantly, it is still a school day, so off to class.